Guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kennedy, and I'm coming to you after the Commanders' 13-6 loss to the Miami Dolphins in Week 2 of the NFL preseason. We have a lot of storylines to talk about, including Jayden Daniels, another outing for him, his second outing in the burgundy and gold. We've got some offensive standouts to talk about, defensive side of the ball as well, and then wrapping things up with some other storylines because there was a lot going on in this game, so I want to break it all down. And just give you guys all the information in one place. So starting things off, before we jump into Jayden Daniels, it was a 13-6 loss to the Dolphins. Again, the score does not really matter as much because it's preseason. The Commanders have lost both their preseason games. Dolphins have won both, but again, the Commanders won all three of their preseason games last year, and they ended up going 4-13. So again, it does not really matter, but do want to point out it was a low-scoring game. We'll talk about the offensive struggles in some time, but just want to put out some other things. Miami got out to an early lead. Washington scored 6 points, 2 field goals in the second quarter. Could not find the end zone throughout the rest of the game. But yeah, so let's just jump right into it with Jayden Daniels. The starters, the offensive and defensive starters, I think the defensive had about one drive, maybe two, and then the offensive starters had 2 drives, I would say. No Bobby Wagner, no Jonathan Allen, no Daron Payne, no Jordan McGee, no Johnny Newton for the defensive side. All of the offensive starters were out there except for Brandon Coleman. With that being said, let's just jump right into Jayden Daniels because that's what we're all here for. Let's be honest. Jayden Daniels, 10 of 12, 78 yards, 2 rushes for 13 yards for the second overall pick in this past draft. The Washington quarterback, it was not as flashy of a performance, I would say, as his performance against the New York Jets last week. He didn't really throw the ball 40 yards downfield to De'Ami Brown, and he wasn't running all over the place. I'd say there was a few nice rushes I would mention, but it wasn't as flashy of a performance highlight reel, right, as the performance last week. But that doesn't mean this performance wasn't good, because this performance was very good from Jayden Daniels. Again, 10 of 12, which is, I believe, like an 80-something% completion percentage. It was only for 78 yards, 2 rushes for 13 yards, but he was getting the ball out quick. The quick game was definitely visible, I would say, this entire game, not only when Jayden Daniels was the quarterback, but the offense was going quick with Jeff Driscoll under center and eventually Trace McSorley as well. Daniels looked very comfortable. If he was confident with his throws, which I really, really like to see, because we've seen some of these other rookie quarterbacks, holding onto the ball too long. We saw that with a problem with Sam Howell last year. So just Jayden Daniels being able to get the ball out quickly. I know the quick game was kind of a big storyline last preseason and throughout last season in general with Sam Howell, how Eric Bieniemy wanted to get the ball out quick. Short curls to Jahan and Terry and all that. This is a little bit different with Cliff Kingsbury in terms of his quick game, but it was still some of the same things. It was a lot of 5-yard curls, just pick up 5-6 yards here, take what the defense is giving you, and then eventually pick up a first down. It turned into some pretty long drives for the Washington Commanders. It was a 10-play drive to begin the game, and then a 9-play drive for the 2 drives with Jayden Daniels under center. So a 10-play 46-yard drive and a 9-play 52-yard drive. The offense went out there, and Jayden Daniels gave them 2 scoring drives, I would call it, 2 scoring drives. Now, it only ended up equating to 3 points, but they got in the field goal range both times. Riley Patterson missed the first one, and then he knocked down the second one. So we'll get into Riley Patterson towards the end of this episode, but it was another very impressive day from Jayden Daniels. Again, just keep on stacking these days, right? Because Daniels, there was some adversity early on. He was kind of had some incompletions. Some incompletions, and there was a third down, I believe, on the first drive where he kind of had to throw it away. He was under pressure a little bit, but overall, he was finding De'Ami Brown, who was a big part of that first drive. He was throwing passes to Terry McLaurin, John Dotson. He was finding a lot of different guys. There's some screen plays out of the backfield that were drawn up for Austin Eckler and Brian Robinson. It was all clicking. It was clicking for the most part for this Cliff Kingsbury offense under Jayden Daniels. Now, I think it was overall a great game. There was some things still for him to work on. Like I mentioned, there wasn't really that many explosive plays from this offense with the starters under center with the starters in the lineup. But again, it was Dan Quinn kind of said after the game during his press conference, he was asked about these lack of explosive plays, and he just said, "Well, with Jayden Daniels, right? He likes to take deep shots, but there's sometimes when the defense just doesn't give you what you're looking for in terms of taking a deep shot, right? Because Miami, if you watch the game, they were blitzing a lot. Miami loves the cover zero, blitzes and all of that. So Jayden Daniels has to get the ball out quickly, and that's what he was doing throughout his 2 drives. Moving on now to some of the offensive standouts because I've got a long list here. We're going to start with Dyami Brown. I mentioned it last podcast episode, and I think during the preseason week 1 recap episode, there's kind of a battle going on right now for wide receiver 2. It's been a big topic between Commanders Twitter and Commanders fans throughout the last 72, 96 hours or so. Dyami Brown, Jahan Dotson, and Olamide Zaccheaus are the 3 guys kind of fighting for that wide receiver 2 position. In terms of those 3, how stat wise, how the game kind of went for them, I'll go into more depth in a second. But Dyami Brown, 3 catches for 19 yards on 3 targets. Olamide Zaccheaus had 2 catches for 9 yards on 4 targets, and then Jahan Dotson 1 catch for 3 yards on 2 targets. We'll start with Dyami Brown. High usage right out of the gate for the former 3rd round pick back in 2021. Again, he's a guy that's kind of disappointed. We've known this. He's disappointed throughout his first 3 or so years with just over, I believe, 100. I mean, he has less than 200 career receiving yards, I'm pretty sure. So in the regular season, I know he's been a guy that has kind of stood out during the preseason and during training camp for multiple years now. He's doing it again, and I'm starting to buy into it maybe a little bit. I'm starting to get hooked into it. Maybe this is the year where we see the Dyami Brown breakout, and by that I just mean maybe like 500 yards from Dyami Brown because he's getting a lot of use in this Cliff Kingsbury offense. We saw some screens to Brown early on. Brown had all 3 of his catches. All of them were on the first drive, which was pretty amazing. He kind of led him and Jayden Daniels had a great connection. He kind of led that drive into enemy territory. So it was a great performance from Dyami Brown. Jahan Dotson, 1 catch for 3 yards. He had 2 targets. His other target was both of his targets were kind of on a similar little out route towards the sideline. One of them he caught, and one of them, I believe, was a kind of just a little bit of an overthrow from Jayden Daniels. I believe it was an overthrow from Jayden Daniels. Maybe it was from Jeff Driscoll, but I did not. John Dotson definitely played into the second quarter. Only 1 catch for 3 yards, though, which is a little bit interesting. And then, well, maybe his actual catch was on a screen. I can't exactly recall what happened. I'll have to look at the all 22, but I know that his usage was not that high, not as high as Dyami Brown. And for only Olamide Zaccheaus, I can't pronounce his name wrong. Zaccheaus had 2 catches for 9 yards on 4 targets. You can really tell with Zaccheaus or OZ they call him, his speed and his kind of explosion was something that Adam Peters really liked about him when he first signed him back in March, I believe, or April, I want to say, somewhere around there. So you could really see it with OZ how the speed that he has right out of the gate, right when he gets the ball. So I'm excited to see what he brings. If I had to give the edge to someone with this wide receiver 2 battle right now, I would give it to Dyami Brown, which is probably the consensus right now, just because of the usage that he's getting in this Cliff Kingsbury offense. We saw Dyami Brown. I mean, how many screens did we see with Dyami Brown last year with Eric Bieniemy? Not many, but Cliff Kingsbury is using him in different ways, and I've liked it. You put the guy with speed in space instead of just trying to chuck it deep to him every target or whatever. So I kind of like it with Dyami Brown. Like how they're using him. I'd give him the edge right now for wide receiver 2, probably behind him. If I hate to say it, but it'd probably be OZ as the wide receiver 3 and then Jahan as the wide receiver 4, but it's still all up in the air. We don't really know. But there's definitely been some talks, especially between national analysts, about potentially Jahan Dotson not being on this team week 1, being on the move, potentially in a trade, which I don't really want to go into that right now, but I'll just say that it's more likely now than it probably was a week or 2 weeks ago. More likely than we thought it would be a week or 2 ago now that he is not on this team week 1, but instead on a different team, and maybe some draft capital, some extra draft capital we have back for next year's draft. All right, moving on. Terry McLaurin definitely back. I'll stay with the wide receiver room. Terry McLaurin definitely back. Had a nice 20-yard reception. It was kind of a short curl. He was going up against Cam Smith, the former 3rd-round pick, I want to say. 2nd or 3rd-round pick corner. I believe out of South Carolina, I want to say 2 years ago, 2023. He had a nice little curl route. It was caught by Terry, and then Terry made Smith miss and turned it upfield, picked up an extra 15 yards after the reception. So great play from Terry McLaurin. Luke McCaffrey had a great game. 2 catches for 30 yards. His first catch was a leaping grab in the air for about, how much was it? I think it was like for 21 yards, a leaping catch in the air. Love to see it from Luke McCaffrey, who was a guy that kind of gone under the radar, I would say. Maybe not impressed Commanders fans as much as they were hoping for, I would say. But still, he's a rookie. He's a back of the 3rd round rookie. Final pick of the 3rd round. You got to remember that. So final pick of the 3rd round. He was a rookie, and he's still developing, just like a lot of these guys. I know half the draft class probably was not out there tonight, but still, you got to look at these rookies still developing as players, and not just the rookies, but I guess the UDFAs and some of these other guys as well. Jeff Driscoll, 41-yard rush. He was looking like Jayden Daniels out there, I would say. He went 11 of 15 for 82 yards, was very impressive in my opinion. Both Driscoll and Daniels, high completion percentage. You could really tell that quick game. Want to get the quick completions. The completion percentage is going to be high if you are accurate. Jeff Driscoll was accurate. That 41-yard rush, he was kind of stepped up into the pocket and he kind of took off. There was really no one there, and it led to a big rush. Now, you like to see him slide at the end. I think he took a big hit, but still, though, I would say in general, it was him. And there was one play I know is probably going to get blown up in the media about Jayden Daniels and Dan Quinn telling him, "Oh, run out on the sideline," which is like totally valid. But I'm getting off track. But Jayden Daniels, there was one time when Dan Quinn said, "You should run out of bounds. Don't take the hit, this, that," and Daniels took a hit. You live and you learn. Don't want to spend too much time on that one. But Jeff Driscoll, same thing here. Kind of, that's why I wanted to bring it up. Same thing here. He took a big hit at the end of his rush, did not slide down, which didn't end up really doing that much in terms of injury. But you like to see a quarterback slide. So Jeff Driscoll was another guy that was impressing me. I don't really want to talk about the offensive line too much. I didn't really pay attention to them. I saw one clip online of Jayden Daniels kind of getting to the second level. He was playing at right guard, and he got to the second level and made a nice block. But I don't want to get to them. If you want to follow my Twitter at Mason_Kinahan, where I'll be posting the all 22 for that, because I'll be watching that tomorrow morning. So hopefully the offensive line played well. I think they played well. I mean, there was definitely some times. I think there was one play with Trent Scott that was kind of not so great. I mean, Trace McSorley took 3 sacks. Driscoll took 1. But again, McSorley, I'll talk about him with the other storylines, but apparently he just did not practice beforehand. So we'll get to that in a little bit. But beyond that, those were kind of my guys. A lot of the wide receivers. Sinnott had a good catch as well, I would say, in this one. The running backs, Brian Robinson is in for a big year, I feel like. He is going to go for 800 plus yards, in my opinion. I think he's the lead back for the Washington Commanders. Eckler, I'll have to look at the snap counts, but Eckler did not get that many snaps with the starters, and with the starters and running the ball. I think he probably had like 2. Let me check. Did he even have a rush? I don't even think Austin Eckler had a rush this game, which is interesting. Yeah, Eckler had 1 catch for 4 yards on a screen. He did not have a rush at all, unless, I don't think he did. So he didn't have a rush at all. Brian Robinson, I don't think. Oh, no, Brian Robinson had 3 carries for 22 yards, averaged 7.3 yards per carry. So, again, I think Robinson is in for a very good year. This run blocking from this offensive line, especially the starting unit, looks very promising. So I would definitely take note of that. moving on now to the defensive starters, defensive standouts, but starters first off. Frankie Louvu and Mike Sainristil. I've mentioned Mike Sainristil so many times on this podcast already, and same with Louvu last week as well. These are two of the best players on this defense. Like two of the entire defense, Frankie Louvu and the rookie, I might have mentioned, the rookie, Mike Sainristil right now, in my opinion, is the best corner on this team. Now he is a nickel corner, so he's kind of has a slightly different role and play style than an outside corner, but still, Mike Sainristil is the best corner on this team right now. I don't think it's kind of up for debate, but again, that could change if others improve. Frankie Louvu was kind of all over the field. He had, I believe, 3 tackles. I'll have to check. I'll find it later. But Frankie Louvu, I know, had like 3 tackles almost in a row, maybe at least 2 tackles in a row. He was all over the field, pushing guys going from sideline. That's something that we saw last week as well. He's going to be a fan favorite, I feel like. He's going to be someone that a lot of fans are going to love. Next guy I want to mention is the 2021 first-round pick, Jamin Davis, because what a game from the edge rusher position. From the edge rusher position for Jamin Davis. A strip sack, a tackle for loss. He's going to be one of the first all-22 cut-ups I'm going to post because he had a very impressive game. He played into the third quarter at the edge rusher position, and Dan Quinn was saying he felt like even though the team was kind of thin on off-ball linebackers this game without Jordan McGee out there and Bobby Wagner didn't play either, he still wanted Jamin Davis to play at edge rusher because he felt like he had something there, and he was so close to being able to kind of make that leap a little bit, and he was right. Jamin Davis had a very good game, including creating the Commanders' first and right now only turnover, or defensive turnover, for Washington. It was a strip sack. He had a very good pass rush against the left tackle. It was like a great hand fighting skills. Got to the inside of the left tackle and swaps the ball out of the hands of who was it? Of the Dolphins quarterback. It wasn't Mike White. Skylar Thompson. It was Skylar Thompson. Swats the ball out of his hands as Skylar Thompson's loading back to throw. And Andre Jones Jr., the 2023 7th-round pick, is there to pick up the fumble and recover the fumble. So very impressive day from Jamin Davis. I'm excited to see his all-22 film because is he making that slight leap? Even if he can just be a average pass rusher right now, or maybe make one tackle for loss per game, which is, again, that's eventually going to be a lot. But if Jamin Davis can just make one standout play per game at edge rusher, he is definitely going to be worth putting on this team. I think this performance tonight locks him onto the final roster. You can tell how much Dan Quinn loves that guy and loves his skill set and his athleticism. So Jamin Davis right now, I know he was a question for me with my pre-training camp 53-man roster. I didn't have him on it. Now, though, I would have it on it. I would have him on that roster. And another guy that I would have on that final 53-man roster is this undrafted safety out of Texas Tech. It's Tyler Owens. He's become a fan favorite over this last week. He had 3 tackles and a tackle for loss for the Washington Commanders today. He had made play after play, it felt like. He had 3 tackles in a row, I believe, in the red zone. It was a nice little red zone stand for the Washington Commanders. I believe it was in the third quarter, I want to say. Maybe it was a little bit before or after that, but nice little red zone stand where it was the Dolphins were kind of at the 15 or so yard line, and they were moving the ball downfield, the 15, and then in the red zone, they got them down to, I think, second or third down and like medium. And then there was a pass interference play, which was a little questionable, I would say, but a pass interference play, I believe on Dom Hampton. I believe it was on Dom Hampton. So then it goes back to a first down, but the team is able to hold them to a field goal. The team was able to create the turnover, I think, with the Jamin Davis strip sack, or maybe it was just an actual sack in general. Oh, wait, no, it was Javonte Jean-Baptiste who came away with the sack. So 4 sacks on the day for the Washington Commanders. So that's something to look at, because this team did not have any sacks last week against the Miami Dolphins, I believe, against the New York Jets, or maybe they only had 1 sack against the New York Jets. But a lot more pass rush pressure, I would say, especially with um, the depth of this pass rush, and even some other guys like AJ Woods coming off the edge. He's usually a cornerback. He was coming off the edge and he got a sack. So a lot of things mixing up for Joe Witt and Dan Quinn in that defense. Good game though from Tyler Owens. I'll post his all 22 cut up probably as well. Tariq Castro-Fields, it was kind of a slow start for him, but then he had multiple pass breakups in the second half. That was a guy that I loved. And then I mentioned it already, but Jean-Baptiste with his first career sack for the Washington Commanders, a 7th-round pick out of Notre Dame. He spent 5 years as an Ohio State Buckeye before transferring over to Notre Dame, where he had a career year last season. Other things to note for this defense, I mentioned it. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned already, but Dom Hampton played time at linebacker, especially with the thinner linebacker group that we had. He kind of started at linebacker and then moved over to a safety role later on. Nick Whiteside, the cornerback, spent time at safety, and then Chiganuzium spent time inside at the nickel position. So I mentioned it last game as well, but Dan Quinn is really mixing these guys up. He's having these players try and play in different positions, just seeing what do they have right now with the guys that they have, who can play in what, who could maybe make an impact at maybe positions they wouldn't normally play, trying to use their athletic traits to the best, or their instincts to the best of their advantage. So I like this so far from Dan Quinn and this defense. There are things to work on still. Outside corner was something that was a little bit worrisome, I would say, especially early on in this game. This corner room is not looking wonderful, I would say right now. But again, there is time to improve still. There's time to improve. I'm hoping this corner room improves without having to add somebody. And for the people that are saying, oh, just sign Stephon Gilmore, here's what I'll say to that. When you get to this point in the season, and there are still these veteran players on the market, you look at, I guess, Justin Simmons, who just got signed by the Falcons. You look at some of these other top-tier safeties, and then, of course, Stephon Gilmore as well. These kind of older veterans that maybe had a good year the previous year, but they are definitely out of their prime. It's usually because the reason why they're on the market is usually because these coaches, like I've come to trust these coaches and general managers. They know something that we don't, and that they're kind of washed at this point. Not as athletic as they used to be, not as great players as they used to be. So I've kind of come to trust, especially when a guy like Stephon Gilmore is still on the market. There's got to be something up with that. So that's why I'm not like a big go sign Stephon Gilmore type guy, because I don't know how much that will help this secondary right now. I don't know if him coming in makes him the best corner on this team, which is a little surprising to say, but you'd probably come in maybe slightly better than Benjamin St-Juste right now, I would say, just because, I mean, maybe he is still very good, and these coaches and GMs are making a big mistake, and that's the reason why. And like, there's no reason why he shouldn't still be on the market. But I mean, just like kind of look at this from a bird's eye view now. Why would a guy like Stephon Gilmore still be on the market on August 17th, August 18th, 2 weeks before week 1 of the NFL, or 3 weeks before the week 1 of the NFL season? So that's just something to look at. But yeah, that's kind of the defensive storylines. Moving on to some other notable stuff. Riley Patterson, the kicker, guys, we've got a kicker problem. I know I said it last episode too, but we've got a kicker problem, people. Riley Patterson, 2 of 4. He made it from 38 yards, 46 yards, but he missed from 43 and 49. He's just not consistent beyond 40 yards right now. We saw him last. I don't remember if maybe it was sometime last week or the week before that when he made 3 50-plus yarders in practice. Was that? I don't know. Maybe that was during the joint practice. I don't really know. But it was kind of like the day after they cut Ramiz Ahmed. and he made 350+ yarders, but now he's missing from 43 and 49. He's just inconsistent right now, but after 40 yards, I don't know what else to say. I don't think Riley Patterson will be the kicker week 1 unless he completely steps up and turns it around. In terms of extra points, he didn't take any extra points because we didn't score a touchdown. So, yeah, there's that. Trace McSorley, I want to talk about him a little bit. My guy from Briarwoods, Trace McSorley finished the game 11 of 21, 93 yards, and an interception. He had a passer rating of 44.3, so not wonderful from Trace. The interception, I mean, that last drive, Dan Quinn talked about in his press conference, just the energy. I mean, that's like why that's why he loves football. It's just the energy from the players, the team. If you watch the broadcast and you were up that late, trying to watch third stringers and fourth stringers battle it out in a 13-6 ball game, then, well, first off, yeah, good for you. And also, you'd see how crazy of a drive it was. Trace McSorley threw the interception. It was a good pass, I would say, to Cole Turner on kind of like an in route or a short in, maybe a slant route. Good pass to Cole Turner. It's slightly high though, and it bounces off of Turner's like helmet and shoulder pad area. It bounces off of that, goes into the air, is intercepted by. Let me figure it out. Intercepted by Mark Perry. And then the ball, I don't remember who stripped it away, but someone got their hand in there and it was recovered by Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint. So Perry fumbled it and then it was recovered by Rosemy-Jacksaint, which was massive because that play was like a third down and like a 3rd and 10 for the Commanders offense. And so since they turned it over and then they got the ball back, it became a 1st and 10 with like 20 seconds left. It was a wild play. But Trace McSorley definitely, I don't think it was anything to maybe challenge for like the roster spot or anything. I wouldn't say that, but 11 of 21, you could tell that throughout that he's never thrown to these receivers before. You could tell that he barely knew the playbook. And I mean, he came in on Wednesday. He signed and he got here late Wednesday night. He traveled down to Miami, and he never practiced. Dan Quinn said that in the press conference today. Trace McSorley never practiced because they just did not have time for him to practice during the joint practice or on Friday. So McSorley coming in here hasn't practiced football as a Washington Commander, and then putting up a performance like this, leading a would have been touchdown tying, potentially winning drive if they went for 2 points. If they brought it down to like a 4th and goal almost situation, and then he fires a slant to, I believe it was Mitchell Tinsley, and it bounces in the air, and it should have been a catch from Tinsley. It was a little bit of a harder catch to make, but a catch you should make, which was a little bit disappointing, but still, McSorley, he delivered some dimes, I would say, down the sideline. Once he got out of the pocket, it was interesting what he could do, the creativity from McSorley. You could tell he was kind of like running for his life sometimes, kind of just trying to make a play, especially on the 3rd and 4th down with under a minute to go. But I mean, he was making some great plays. He was definitely pretty good out of structure. But again, I wouldn't say it was anything to challenge for a roster spot or anything. So still a pretty fun end to a game that was fairly boring if you weren't a fan of one of these two teams. A 13-6 final on Saturday night. So that will be it. That'll be it. Oh, one last thing. Hold on, I'm gonna go back. One last thing. Other notable storylines. Emmanuel Forbes mentioning in his on TV interview with Brian Colbert on the Commanders local TV network that Forbes felt like he's been under a microscope, and he's like, quote, under, he said like he was under a microscope, and just because of like the hate and the stuff that he gets from whenever he makes a small mistake and all that, which, I mean, in this day and age, unfortunately, it's reasonable, but also like still that's kind of, I mean, you can kind of see inside of what Forbes is thinking. Someone who is, there's such high expectations on Forbes since he was a former 1st-round pick, which I mentioned it, I believe in the episode with George Carmy. You just remove the 1st-round pick tag on him, and there aren't these high expectations anymore, and people are just like, doing the normal stuff. You'd praise him for when he does something right. Maybe you probably wouldn't like say something if he did something wrong, because a guy like James Pierre, right, on this roster, people aren't really talking about when he does something right or something wrong. So with Forbes, it's really just because of the expectations of spending a first round pick on him, which again, someone who is no longer associated with this team, or no longer currently associated with this team, no longer is making decisions with this team, drafted Emmanuel Forbes in the first round. It wasn't a decision that Adam Peters made. It wasn't a decision that Dan Quinn made. It was a decision that a guy who's, I mean, rightfully so, not a part of this team anymore made. So you can't really blame Forbes for being drafted in the first round, because he wasn't the one that was drafted in the first round. It wasn't his decision to say, "Oh, hey, I'm gonna be drafted in the first round." All right. It was someone else's decision, and they are no longer with the team. So, with Forbes, I do feel like he's getting just a little bit too much hate right now. I'll have to look back. I know he only played like one possession to one drive today. So I'll have to look back at the film with him. I did not hear anything about Forbes, which for a cornerback is a good thing. I don't think he was ever targeted. I think he played like 11 snaps maximum or something. So that is what I got to say about Emmanuel Forbes. Do feel like he's getting a little bit too much hate right now, but it's just because of the expectations that have been placed on him right now unfairly. So, yeah, that'll be it for this week's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. The next episode is going to be coming out on Thursday, where I'm going to be giving my I'm blanking, my final 53-man roster prediction before Saturday's game. So be ready for that one. I'm excited for it. Kind of already mentioned who I'm already going to have on it. You can kind of tell by listening to this episode, but that'll be it for today's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.